I probably should have started recording like whenever we were doing
Whatever.
stuff.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah,
That's the
but
warm up.
Yeah,
yeah.
that was the whole purpose of this, just to get the idea down, right?
Yeah. So I mean, this is really, I mean, it's the first episode, but it's just kind of a test. So, anyone who's tuning in right now, welcome to the uh, Dad Level Podcast. It's kind of a working title. We may change this at any time. It was just kind of the process that we put together. So, we kind of want to do this as kind of like a talking about our memories and current events going on with ourselves and what it's like being dads as we're getting older and trying to find times to relive our childhood dreams and things we used to do in the past, as far as like playing games and collecting and all that other stuff and shenanigans of going to arcades and uh, just hanging out in general.
I think that's a good starting topic. I mean, just arcades in general. Like, what happens to the arcade? Obviously, nobody's leaving their house because of COVID and the current situation. But like before that, it was kind of like the fall of the arcade, right? Like ever since people got these really awesome home machines that can do so much. Like I'd like to start with that. Like, what was it that really changed the reasoning of why we went into arcades? Do you think it was because of the integration of internet into our machines, or is it just better games, convenience? Like, what do you think really kind of killed the arcade?
A lot of it probably is the change in, as the consoles became like, more as far as graphics and being able to handle a whole lot more. They became just equivalent as an arcade. I mean, because back then, we had Super Nintendo, Nintendo, and all that stuff, and PlayStation, and you were still getting better graphics out of an arcade than you were with that. Plus, I guess as prices went up, it's harder to justify to having the change to go. Let's go hang out with my friends, where I can just go online and play, or have my buddies over, because you're paying $60 for a game versus $20 for a bunch of multiple things you could do. At least that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of going to an arcade, right, was the community, right? Being able to go there, meet with a whole bunch of your friends, be able to get through and play games and stuff like that. And whenever you don't have to now go to a place to find that camaraderie, you can just, in the comfort of your couch, just go in, log on. Everybody, pops up. You can immediately get, a game together of whatever you want to play. Because, I know, with arcades especially, you would always run into like, the light guns wouldn't work right, or this machine would be busted, and oh man, I was really wanting to play this, but it's down, it's having to be repaired, all that stuff. You don't really run into those similar kinds of issues, but at the same time, you're getting the the experience that you got before. Not exactly, because you're not physically there with one another, but you're still getting that connection between people and still getting to play games. So yeah, that's really just kind of what seems to have done it all in, and I know you guys went to arcades more than me. Like the most arcade experience I had was like at Armadillo Lanes, going and bowling and then turning around and going to the back and playing Darkstalkers or something while it was there. So it was like, yeah, unless you had a really strong arcade culture in place, like in Japan, where it's still a big thing, it's still a big place to go, all that. Like if you didn't have a really strong foundation of something like that, then yeah, it wasn't going to take much to cause it to crumble.
Yeah, that's a great point, David. I mean, my first trip to Japan was a mind-blowing experience. That was almost a decade ago, and arcades were still alive and thriving. I think the thing that really surprised me the most when you travel to other countries is the age demographic of people who were in the arcades, right? So like for us, going to Super Track and these other smaller arcades, Tilt and things like that, it was normally like a teenager or, somebody below the age of a teenager, kind of in that range. That's who we'd see in there. Every once in a while be an adult in their 20s, but it was mainly teenagers. And that was like the hangout spot. For me, like what I think is really interesting is that like in between period, right? So You know, we started with NES and kind of Sega Master System, some of the more basic 8-bit stuff. A lot of that was just kind of like hanging out at home. Maybe you played with family. But when you got to like Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64, like the multi-tap integration, when you had the ability to have 4 controllers, that changed everything. Like to me, the game changer was GoldenEye, right? Like everybody gathered at people's houses. So like I mean, what are your thoughts there? Like compared to an arcade versus let's all go to Vince's house because that's what it was back in the
Yeah, it
day.
was good.
Let's
Yeah,
all go to
to go to
Vince's
my house.
house,
Yeah.
right? And play games. Like, what do you think, Vince?
So, well, that branched into a whole different thing too, because, you know, a lot of the stuff that we used to play at the arcade environment was fighting games. I mean, heavily. You know, of course, we had the occasional Police 911 or DDR, or different
Like the
gallery
card game.
shooters, or the you know, the 4-player beat 'em ups, but it was really the fighting game scene. I mean, that was the thing that drew us in, and that's how you made a lot of your friends, because that goes into a whole other topic with like the difference between what it was like, you know, going and seeing your opponent and fighting them versus like seeing them online, where, you know, you got all this trash talk now, and it's like it makes it a little harder to make friends, with, you know, you don't get to see them, you don't, and then, you know, it was all based on your skill. You know, you're sitting there playing and stuff, and then sometimes now, you know, you don't know if someone's got a modded controller or something like that. But the introduction of like multiplayer, like the Dreamcast and um, the 64 having the, you know, 4-player, and the GameCube, you know, that brought a whole new aspect. But, you know, GoldenEye, you know, it really kind of was one of the games that brought the first person shooter to home consoles. You know, having that ability to be able to play multiplayer split screen with your friends, and then having those friends that would sit there and be like, I know where you're at by looking at your opponent's screen, and then going over there and sneaking over and trying to kill them. But yeah, no, it's it's really changed. There's a lot of good stuff, and um, but it's different. Um, I miss the arcade feel. I miss going into those places and the dark lighting, and then the all the game sounds going on all at once. It had a smell to it, you know, and a vibe that you couldn't get anywhere else. And I miss that. You know, like, you know, you'd get out of school, go hang over there, you know, Super Trek or Wizard, and for us uh, here in Texas, and, you know, the always going over to see like the new games that would come in. I mean, that was great. I mean, Space Harrier and uh, Afterburner, and, you know, all those like cool Sega machines that were coming in that had all these gimmicks while you were playing were really cool. And then, you know, there's just so much that was just a unique experience that I think that sadly, like my son, unless we and you guys kids, you know, they'll never experience that unless, you know, we either build it ourselves with, you know, Arcade One Up, or um, there's the specialty places like we have, like Joysticks, and I was like, there's a few others that, you know, you can go and play arcades and stuff, and but it's not the same feel. It's different.
I think that takes us to another topic, you know, talking about what we experience versus what our kids experience, right? So I think it's a good point to kind of talk about our kids for a moment. So I have a son who's a little over 6 months. Vince, how old is Edward?
He is 6. He'll be 7 in August.
Wow, great. How about you, David? How about your kids?
I got a 7-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. So
Wow.
yeah, it's I've had a lot of interesting experiences with him. Like, you know, kind of like what Vince was talking about. One of the things that I always struggle with is, you know, I'm a filthy casual when it comes to fighting games, right? Like, one of my favorite fighting games of all time is Guilty Gear, and I'll be honest, for the first 2 games of the entire series I played for it, I didn't even know roaming cancels were a thing. Like, it wasn't until I got online and started watching other people playing, and I saw these weird little bursts of energy coming out of people. I was like, what is that? And I went looking, and I was like, oh, there's a whole game mechanic I didn't even know existed in this game, right? So I've tried to get online and play, but especially kind of niche anime games like Guilty Gear, man, you've got the people like me that kind of play it and sort of try and get in, and then you've got the hardcore guys that have been in there forever. And you just walk in and get bodied, right? And it's not like the guy is standing there and you can sit there and ask him like, "Hey, man, what the hell did you just do to me?" That was, so I can kind of understand it. It's just kind of like GG and off they go, right? And so I've tried to tell my son that before of like, I'm not really big into playing online games because, I do want that. I prefer that ability to like see the guy there, right? To be in that atmosphere around the other people whenever we're playing. And in the online experience, it's just kind of, these voices that populate in your ear a little bit and then they're gone and they may or may not show up again. Yeah, you can send friend requests and, sort of do the same setup, but yeah, it's just not quite the same. Where with him, he gets on to like all these strategy games and these like medieval kind of combat sort of deals. And I mean, it doesn't even phase him, right? It's just that's the atmosphere. That's the water that he as a fish has been swimming in forever, right? So it's just kind of that's his understanding. He doesn't need that personal connection. He just wants to go in there and fight some people and have fun, right?
I think that's the dynamic, the difference between our generation and our kids, right? Because they're growing up truly in the immersive age of internet, right? Like, so we experienced what the world was like without the internet, and then seeing the dynamic change of like, the first inklings of what it could do to the gaming industry to now where we are, right? So I agree with you. I like that personal touch. Like, there's times that I remember going to arcade and somebody would do some like ridiculous combo to me on Alpha 3, and I'm like, what happened? And I'm like trying to watch them on their joystick. And a lot of times you would make friends with that person, like, hey, let me show you what I'm doing. Let me give you a little insight of how this is happening. And you made a friend, right? And it's like, Vince, you're talking about the arcade. The thing I miss the most about the arcade, it's so silly, is when there was a line and you went up, you put your quarter on the top. Like, that's
exactly.
That's just like, that was such a cool feeling. It's like, yeah, I'm official. I'm on the chart. It's just a cool feeling. But just going back to our kids, like, I think it's awesome to bring that nostalgic feel to them, to show like what you're doing, Vince, with your kids, with Edward, like showing him like, hey, these are the games I played growing up. This is kind of like what it was like being your age, in my time period, and that's awesome. But I think also our kids can teach us a lot too, right? So David, your kids are a little older. You have a 13-year-old who's probably like immersed in certain games who could show you, hey, Dad, this is what's like hot right now, right? And it's like completely over our heads. So to me, it's like when our kids are like teenagers, well, you have a teenager now, Jordan, David, it makes me think like, what are they going to be playing? What are they going to be so excited about? Like, what's so far beyond where we're at, right? Because we're still nostalgic about arcades and console machines, but I don't know what's like. Are they all going to be obsessed with VR and VR technology? Like, what's the next iteration of what was really cool for us, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm thinking. Like, what's going to happen next for them?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, that's kind of an interesting question, right? Because I know with with the other thing that plays into it, and it's kind of hard to tell, is just the fact that like everybody's a little bit different with the kind of games they like, right? Like, Aiden seems to be really immersed in like strategy games and stuff like Total War and all that kind of stuff. And I just never really I like those games for like the large scale combat going on. I never quite nailed down the whole micromanaging of economies and governments and all that stuff going on in it, and always kind of struggled with. But the reason why I even have like PSVR or the Oculus is because he was the one who was just like chewing my ear off of, Dad, I want to play this game, that game, the other, stuff that he was seeing like ads for online, or that he was especially watching like people on YouTube play, right? Like seeing them go in and play different games on VR. That kind of became the thing that drew him in curiosity wise to see like how immersive that kind of experience can be. So, yeah, initially I really wasn't that interested in VR, just because to me it's not, it is an extra level of immersion, but it doesn't, something in my brain just doesn't quite get invested in it the way everybody else seems to. But he's the one who convinced me to go in and buy that and started getting into it. So, yeah, absolutely. They kind of influence us and stuff that's coming and getting us involved in things that we might not otherwise.
Yeah, because as easy and accessible it is to get VR right now, there isn't um a real like reason. It's still kind of a gimmick, even with like Half-Life Alex, which I'm loving. I need to finish it. I mean, I just picked up an Oculus S, um say back on Black Friday because it was on sale through something through my work. And and that's the only thing I've really kind of messed with on it, because it's not a um thing I see myself using a whole lot until like later on when other things come out. I haven't purchased Star Wars Squadrons to check it out as far as playing that while I'm on my PC, because I purchased it on the PS4. Um, but yeah, I mean it's cool. It's different. I mean, um, but it still has that same feel that it had back in the '90s when with the VR stuff. Um, it's not a. It's kind of like with the Wii. You had the motion controls and stuff, and that was a real hard thing to try to really get into after playing games for 20 years of having a controller in your hand and being able to get full grasp of what you're doing. If I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to pull out my DDR pad, or I'm going to call up Alex, hey, let's go over to U of H and go play some DDR. I mean, or um, find one of the arcades we had and go play Police 911, where it's a little bit more active. I'm not having to just do things with my hands like that. That's why I never played Skyward Sword. It's the only Zelda game I never played, because it's like I wanted the option to be able to play this game with a controller. I shouldn't have to have motion controls. I shouldn't have to do all these things just to be able to play a game.
Yeah. Talking about like all the innovations in technology, there's so many like new tools for gaming, like new ways to get immersed, right? And for me, like this is I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but this is how I feel about gaming right now. So, I bought a PS3 and I was still like caught in. I was actually enjoying quite a few of the games that I had on my PS3. And then I got a PS4 and things started shifting a little bit. Like I started losing interest. The games that were coming out weren't like the graphics were amazing, right? And it was a lot of kind of like the same old stuff. It was like part 5 of this, part 6 of this, of something we played in the 80s, right? And it's like, what's new? What's innovative? There's nothing that's really like a new story that I haven't seen or I haven't like been a part of yet. And it was just more of the same, and it was just like really good graphics. But for me, like the gameplay was so much more important than the graphics. So I tried these like immersive games, all like try 'em at Target or something, in the store, and like, I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I get bored in like 5 minutes because I'm not like sucked into the game. So like I traveled quite a bit for work. I did like 60 flights a year before COVID hit. And I was playing Shadowrun, Super Nintendo Shadowrun on an emulator. I was obsessed with it. I mean, we're talking about a 16-bit, really choppy, pixelated. I was obsessed because the story sucked me in, right? It's like to me, there hasn't been a game that I've seen lately that just sucks me in. I'm still like attracted to wanting to play these old games like PS2 and below. For some reason, that's like the line for me. I'm just not excited about games beyond that time period. So is it because I'm just like stuck in this nostalgic loop? Or do you also feel like games haven't changed, or like what how do I premise this? Like games aren't the same in the sense like the storyline, the gameplay isn't what it used to be. It's more focused on the graphics, because that's how I feel about it right now.
That's a
I
hard.
mean,
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, I mean, it is hard to look back and try and consider, stories, because there are absolutely good story games that are still put out, right? And it is kind of hard to figure out, am I not drawn into this story enough because I'm just jaded on the fact that I've been to this story before, right? I've seen, it might not be the same characters with the same names and the same faces, but it's like I've seen these story beats before. I've been through this before, and I've kind of done it. And yeah, it's a little bit prettier this time around, but now there's not like a motorcycle scene where I get to fight this thing as I'm going through it. Instead, it's just like me walking down a hallway, fighting a boss real quick, and then moving to the next hallway kind of deal. There's not that. So I agree on the one hand of it seems like it's kind of harder to find those really interesting, compelling type stories, but I also think it kind of goes back to the fact that games in and of themselves, with the nature of them becoming AAA, right? That the budgets behind them, it's like movies and the big budget blockbuster type movies. They want to focus in on what is an idea or an IP or something that will generate the money we need to recoup what we're dumping into this, right? And I think more than anything, that's what kills a lot of big game innovation. Is no one really wants to kind of go out there on that ledge outside of like Nintendo, who just lose their minds and say, all right, everybody, we're going to turn our main console into a handheld because we can, and we think it'll do great, and they go off and they do that. It's like that's great, and it just seems like more than anything, I think that's really what hamstrings a lot of people. Is they feel like we need to stick to these same story beats. We need to stick to this same similar type of gameplay, right? I know that I've seen people complain about the fact that like all the PlayStation 4 exclusive games are like the same, couple people wandering around the same kind of open world with, just beat for beat similar stories. And it's like, I see where they're coming from. I don't completely agree, because I think some of those games are still good, but I can see where they would see those sort of similarities and kind of think that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, you guys know me. I've always been the person that, well, I'll take that back. So back in high school, I was completely Sony. I mean, I love my Super Nintendo and things like that, but it was always Sony. But as I got older and I had a job and disposable income, I purchased both because I wanted to be able to experience all of it. I wasn't a side for which I wait a flag for this or that anymore. It's like, well, I have the money, so why not I go buy this stuff? So when so I was getting like the best of both worlds playing different things, because PlayStation tend to be my single player system, and then my Xbox was me playing multiplayer shooters and MMOs and things like that with my friends. So, and then Nintendo, I get a wide variety. I mean, I get the latest stuff from Nintendo, and then all the way down to like even the indie titles, like Cyber Shadow, which is I'm on the final chapter of that game. Is amazing, and it just harkens back to like the Batman NES game from Sunsoft and Ninja Gaiden, and it's great. The music's great. The gameplay is great. It's very simplistic. It just throws back that nostalgia. So, but with modern gaming, it just depends. I mean, we have there's tons of variety of stuff out there, and if you're working and you don't have access to be able to see the things that are coming out, and which I've done. I've been in a bubble where I didn't even know something was coming out, and I used to be the person, and I still am, but I used to be the person that like I knew about everything. Um, I was the person people would come to for stuff like that back before the internet. Um, but gaming itself, I mean, there's so many good things right now. I mean, between like Ghost of Tsushima, which I still need to finish, Cyberpunk, and sadly is a sore topic for a lot of people. But I mean, from what I've experienced so far playing, it's pretty good. It's got its glitches. I mean, most games do have their glitches. Yeah, it's rushed, and that's a whole other topic. But I just finished Ease 9 um, yesterday, and I loved it. But it's one of those things where it's like, I can play an RPG, and now I'm going to get a complete package. I know I'm going to get the same tropes of everything, but it's about the story. For me, it's always been when I play a game, it's just like taking in other media, films or books. I mean, I'm playing it for the story. Some things have difficult mechanics, and I'll get used to it and adapt to it. But sometimes it's like when you have a back catalog of stuff that you're trying to get through and you haven't played a game and maybe a couple months or a year and you're trying to get it done, you're like, how do I play this again? Do I completely need to start over? And if it's an RPG, it's like, oh, great. Where was I last? It depends on what like genre. I think would probably be the best thing, Alex, for you would be find a thing that you enjoyed the most. Because like I know you liked RPGs and uh, platformers and stuff like that. So, and all of us like fighting games. That was a given. So it's just you got to kind of pick your poison. What's going to be the thing that's going to get you through with a new console? Um, and that's you can't go wrong with RPGs, fighting games, and platformers. I mean, those are the easiest things to do. I mean, first person shooters are great. Like Call of Duty and um, my mind's blanking on some of the stuff but those are fun. Gears of War, those are fun and stuff, and they're great for multiplayer. But if your friends are working, you don't have time. It's like, well, do I want to jump online with people I don't know? Because then I might get on a bad team, or I may get on a good team. But on a fighting game, it's like your skill, what you're doing, you're gonna learn, and you know. But it goes back to the whole arcade thing. You don't get the same camaraderie that we used to get back then.
I agree. I think it goes back to what David was saying in regards to fighting games, because I love fighting games, right? And the thing is, like, if us three went to the arcade, David's behind me, he puts a quarter up, and I'm playing him next, right? I know I see David, I see what he's doing on his joystick. Like, there's no questioning that this person is cheating or doing something that I can't see across the world, right? So yes, it's awesome to have the internet and to be connected that way. I could play somebody in Russia, play somebody in China, and we can have a great game going, but I have no idea who that person is on the other end or what they're doing. And they could be completely destroying me. And I don't know if it's because they're just that skilled or they just found some loophole to cheat with, right? So I think that was the kind of discouragement I got when I started playing. Because one, I was so like novice. I come in there, I get destroyed so quickly. And it's tough. Like sometimes I feel like they should just have like a novice only room, so that way you can kind of ramp up, go by levels. But if there is a game out there that you guys would recommend, because I do love like that whole format. Like I like RPGs, but I don't like an RPG that's going to take me a year to defeat, right? Because it's just like it involves too much time and too much energy. That's why I kind of like the kind of Zelda, Shadowrun, like an RPG you can knock out, pretty quickly. That's still fun. That still has a good story. So if you think of a game like that, because I still have my PS4, which literally has dust on it. I need to start turning that thing back on. Yeah.
Well, between both me and David, we got enough stuff you can borrow.
Yes.
Probably beat a whole bunch of them already.
Well, it's funny because and that's where it's like I feel like a lot of the best games like that I've had the most fun in that have come out in the last handful of years have really been just stuff that is kind of been indie type stuff, right? Like I know I got sucked into Stardew Valley for a while, right? Which is just a really simple like little farming deal. It's got like a little adventure elements to it, kind of like how Rune Factory and Harvest Moon and all that stuff is. But it's like I got drawn into that. You talking about Shadowrun? A handful of years back, they put out a studio went out and created an entirely new, Shadowrun RPG game and put it out, and they kickstarted it, and it was a big deal, and they've done sequels of it ever since then, and that was a lot of fun, right? You've got what is it, like Pillars of Eternity, I think is the name of it. And games like that draw in a lot of people and have a lot of fun with it. And those, again, it's like whenever you have a studio that has a really good focused vision on this is the type of game we want to make. This is the kind of thing that we want to go for. And you don't have a lot of outside influence kind of playing into it, then you get those really good, really solid experiences out of them. And yeah, you just got to keep a close eye on it. And, I mean, you know what you like. And so if something seems like it might actually scratch that itch, just got to try and go out there and, give it a shot and see if it works out or not.
Absolutely.
So we got about 5 minutes or so. I guess we can talk in this with how we felt with things going on last year, with COVID and how it's affected us and stuff. Not to be a downer, but kind of for our family and stuff that's been watching, how things have been going on our ends. Alex, if you want to take it away, and then David, and I'll end with mine, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah, it was a huge culture shock. I mean, I mentioned before, my previous role, I traveled quite a bit. I was doing like 60 flights a year. So I was accustomed to not being home every single week. And so being home every week, I started getting cabin fever. I like to be out. I like to see people. I like to see new things. I didn't have that ability. So that was probably the biggest pain point for me. But the fact that my son was born last year, that was awesome. And that kind of outweighed all of that feeling. So if I didn't have my son, I don't know, that would have been a really extremely tough year. But the only advantage was I had more time to spend with him. So I was happy about that.
Yeah. And, you saying that, it's kind of funny. I'm sort of the polar opposite, right? I'm very much a homebody. So, and my job, it's mostly stuff in town. I still have to drive pretty far for it, and I'm able to work from home for it. So, being able to be home and sort of I guess focus a little bit more on the family of just being able to be here. It made work a little bit more difficult, because then I was having to turn around and help the kids figure out why the camera wasn't working for their class and stuff like that. But I mean, the constantly having to worry about, hey, should we get together with these family members, or is it okay to get together with this set of friends? Like, whenever we did feel that need to go out and get together with people, it definitely made it awkward trying to, whether or not we should actually pull the trigger on making that decision. But yeah, I mean, to me, it sucks for some parts, but the other parts, it was just kind of a continuation of the norm for us.
Yeah, I think the biggest shock for me was in 2019. I spent a year all the way up until the end of February going through the process of moving our warehouse and our office at my job, and I was working like 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and um and then coming off of that, going back into normal stuff, and then we had COVID and everything, and getting everybody, the rush to get people to be able to work from home was a transition. And then just because of the nature of what I do with setting up equipment and deploying it to users and stuff, um, I haven't actually had the option to be able to work from home as much as I'd like to. So, being asthmatic and my son the same way, I'm worried about, bringing something home to him. But luckily, I'm in an office that, I don't have to interact with anybody other than my teammate. And so, but it's been hard, not being able to have your friends over or be able to go hang out with them. I've kind of lost count of how many friends and family that we've lost due to the virus. It's been scary. There's been a couple scares that we've had here, but we pull through. We just keep doing the same thing we do, and it's being able to do stuff like this that helps me get through. Being able to talk to you guys, and when we were role playing and stuff, D&D, which I'd love to be able to get back to now that my sister is started a new job. We just kind of got to find a schedule, but it's finding the little things that have helped. And having Anna and Edward going both going to school remotely has been fun and different, and I know a little stressful on Anna, but it's been okay. It's just cultural shock, a change of the norm, and it's not like America as a whole has never been through this when we had one with the Spanish flu 100 years ago. So, but it's just funny that our generation is the one now having to deal with it. But I think we'll get through it, hopefully. But to change it, we got about a minute. Well, everyone, I hope y'all enjoy this. We'll try to do more. We're planning on doing like once a week. Hopefully, we'll record on Sunday and have it out either by Monday or Tuesday on YouTube, and trying to get it on areas where as an audio podcast. So we'll see how that goes. But mainly, this is just for us to be able to kind of keep a log of who we are and things for our kids, something they can come back and go, hey, this is my dad. Or, it's good to have that point of view for them to be able to like pick up something and listen to that explains and helps them understand